East Africa is entering an energy race that could reshape the region for decades. Not simply a race for oil, not simply a race for refineries, but a race to control the infrastructure that connects the oil to the customer. In the north, Kenya is pushing Lamu as the foundation of a new energy corridor. In the south, Tanzania is positioning Tanga around Uganda's Crude and a proposed multi-billion-dollar regional energy hub. And in the middle sits Uganda, holding the oil, possessing the choice of routes, and wielding the power to decide which corridor wins. Because this is no longer simply a question of who builds the biggest refinery, it is a question of who controls the route between the oil and the customer. Who becomes East Africa's energy gateway? For decades, East Africa has faced a structural contradiction. The region has discovered major hydrocarbon resources. Yet much of its petroleum demand still depends on refined products arriving through fragile international supply chains. For landlocked economies, every additional kilometer matters. Every border matters, every port matters, and every disruption in global shipping can become an immediate domestic economic crisis. The old model was simple: bring refined fuel into the region, move it through coastal ports, and send it thousands of kilometers inland. But East Africa's emerging oil industry creates another possibility. What if the region could capture more of the value itself, from the oil field to the pipeline, to the port, to the refinery, to the consumer? That is the infrastructure race now unfolding, and it is changing the meaning of geography. To understand the competition, you have to understand the board. Uganda is emerging as one of East Africa's most important new crude producers. South Sudan already produces oil and represents additional regional supply potential. Ethiopia represents a huge downstream market. And then there are the two coastal powers at the center of the contest, Kenya and Tanzania. Each has geography, each has infrastructure, and each has ambitions that extend far beyond its own borders. But with Uganda sitting directly between them, its choices will dictate how this entire system develops. Kenya's northern strategy begins with Lamu. For years, the LAPSSET corridor has been envisioned as a massive transport and infrastructure network linking Kenya's Indian Ocean coast with Ethiopia, South Sudan, and the wider Horn. But the energy component has grown dramatically more ambitious, with proposals associated with industrial heavyweights like Dangote targeting massive refining capacity at Lamu. If realized, it would transform Lamu from a regional port into the anchor of an entire downstream energy system. Yet, there is a fundamental difference between announcing a refinery and operating one. Where will the crude come from? How will the enormous capital requirement be financed? How will products move from the coast into landlocked markets? And will enough customers commit to the corridor to make the economics work? Because a refinery can have enormous capacity on paper and still fail to become a regional hub. Geography creates opportunity, but cargo creates revenue, and customers create a business. While Kenya has been developing its northern vision, Tanzania has been building a different kind of advantage. The East African Crude Oil Pipeline, EACOP, stretches approximately 1,443 kilometers to carry Uganda's crude from Lake Albert directly to the Chongoleani terminal near Tanga. That connection changed the game. In August 2026, Uganda, Tanzania, and global commodity giant Vitol signed an agreement for a proposed regional energy hub in Tanga, backed by potential investment estimates soaring up to $20 billion. The concept spans refining, storage, logistics, trading, and distribution, evolving Tanga from a simple crude export destination into a broad regional energy platform. But there is an important caveat. Between a high-level memorandum and a functioning energy hub lies a difficult road of financing, engineering, construction, regulation, and balancing supply with demand. Tanzania has a massive structural advantage, but it also has everything to prove. And this is where the story changes, because the rivalry isn't simply Kenya versus Tanzania. Uganda sits at the very center of it. Uganda's crude is the foundation of the southern export corridor, but Kampala is also pursuing its own domestic refining ambitions and has every reason to preserve multiple options. Tanga offers one route. Kenya offers another potential corridor. Uganda's own domestic refinery offers a third. That means Uganda doesn't need to choose a single winner immediately. It can negotiate, it can diversify, and it can use competing infrastructure proposals to maximize its own strategic position. Whoever secures long-term access to Uganda's crude gains more than barrels. They gain volume, leverage, and the foundation for an entire downstream ecosystem. And that changes the question completely. The refinery isn't the prize. The network is. A refinery without reliable crude is useless. A pipeline without sufficient volume is uneconomic. A port without cargo is underutilized. And an energy hub without customers becomes an extremely expensive monument. The real prize is the ecosystem around the refinery. Pipelines, storage terminals, ports, tank farms, trucking networks, trading companies, and long-term supply agreements. Once those pieces connect, switching routes becomes harder. Contracts become stickier. Infrastructure creates dependency. And geography begins to translate into economic power. Lamu represents one model. Build a northern corridor, connect the Indian Ocean to Ethiopia and the wider Horn, add refining capacity, and turn the port into a regional industrial gateway. Tanga represents another. Start with Uganda's crude, build out export infrastructure, then expand into an integrated refining and trading hub. Two coastlines, two strategies, one increasingly interconnected market. But neither corridor can win through infrastructure alone. They need reliable crude, secure financing, competitive costs, and above all, customers. Because the most expensive energy infrastructure in Africa is not necessarily what costs the most to build. It is infrastructure that nobody needs enough to use. And that creates the biggest danger. East Africa could end up building multiple systems designed to capture the same market. Two major energy hubs, competing pipelines, redundant refineries, and billions of dollars chasing overlapping demand. Competition can be healthy. It forces lower prices, better services, and stronger infrastructure. But if political rivalry moves faster than commercial reality, the result will be stranded assets. The decisive question will not be who has the biggest project, but who can deliver energy to customers at the lowest sustainable cost. So who wins? Lamu has geography, Tanga has the EACOP connection, Uganda has the crude, Ethiopia has enormous demand, and neither corridor has won yet. The winner may not be the country with the biggest refinery, the biggest port, or even the country producing the most oil. It may be the country or corridor whose infrastructure becomes impossible for its neighbors to bypass. Because once the pipeline is built, the terminal is operating, the storage tanks are full, and the trucks are moving, geography becomes economics. And economics becomes power. East Africa isn't simply building energy infrastructure, it is deciding who gets to control the gateway. Lamu, Tanga, Uganda, three pieces of a much larger puzzle. And the biggest question is still unanswered. Who controls the gateway?